Human mechanic rescues pregnant alien dragon left alone in a cell. What he found next shocked him. Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal filling his nostrils. The maintenance bay of the orbital station Kepler-7 hummed with the constant drone of life support systems and recycling units. As the head mechanic, Marcus had seen his fair share of broken machinery, but today felt different. The emergency alarm had been blaring for 3 hours straight, and the station's AI kept reporting critical failures in the detention level. Another day, another crisis, Marcus muttered to himself as he gathered his tools. The detention level wasn't usually his responsibility, but when life support systems failed, everyone became his problem. The elevator descended through the station's multiple levels, passing the commercial districts, residential areas, and administrative sections. The deeper they went, the more the wall seemed to close in. The detention level was a place Marcus rarely visited. It housed criminals, political prisoners, and other beings deemed dangerous by the Galactic Council. The air here felt heavier, thick with desperation and fear. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the metallic walls, and the usual hum of ventilation systems was reduced to a wheeze. Marcus checked his tablet for the maintenance request. Life support failure in Cell Block D, Section 7. As he walked through the corridors, he noticed how quiet everything was. Too quiet. Even the guards seemed to have abandoned their posts. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallways, creating an unsettling rhythm that made his skin crawl. When he reached Section 7, Marcus found the source of the problem immediately. A massive power coupling had blown out, leaving an entire block of cells without proper air circulation, heating, or lighting. But as he began his diagnostic, he heard something that made him freeze. It was a low rumbling sound like distant thunder, but it came in regular intervals. Breathing. Following the sound, Marcus discovered that most of the cells in this section were empty. The evacuation protocols had moved prisoners to other areas when the life support failed. All except one. At the end of the corridor in the largest cell, something massive stirred in the darkness. Marcus approached cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. What he saw made him gasp. Curled up in the corner of the cell was the largest living creature he had ever encountered. It looked like the dragons from ancient Earth legends, but this was no fantasy. Scales the color of deep emeralds covered its body, and even in its weakened state it radiated an otherworldly beauty. The dragon's eyes opened as his light fell upon her, and Marcus saw intelligence there. Not the wild animal intelligence he might have expected, but something deeper, something that reminded him of his own mother's eyes when she had been pregnant with his sister. This creature was not just intelligent, she was with child. Marcus quickly checked his tablet for information about the prisoner. The file was mostly classified, but what he could read made his blood boil. The dragon's name was Zarathes, and she had been captured during a raid on a peaceful colony. The charges against her were vague, but the detention order came directly from the Galactic Council's military division. She had been here for 8 months. 8 months without proper medical care. 8 months in a cell barely large enough for her massive frame. 8 months while carrying young. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. He had always believed that the Galactic Council represented justice and order in the universe. But this was neither just nor orderly. Zarathes tried to lift her head as Marcus approached the cell's energy barrier. Her movements were slow and labored, and Marcus could see that she was severely dehydrated. Her scales, which should have been brilliant green, had dulled to a sickly gray-green. Worse still, he could see the slight bulge in her abdomen that indicated her pregnancy was well advanced. "Hey there, girl," Marcus said softly, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "I'm here to fix the life support. You're going to be okay." The dragon's eyes focused on him with surprising clarity. She made a sound almost like a purr, but deeper and more resonant. Marcus had worked with enough alien species to recognize when someone was trying to communicate. He pulled up the translation matrix on his tablet, hoping it had draconian language patterns. To his surprise, when Zarathes spoke again, the words came through in clear English. "You are not like the others," she said, her voice weak but melodious. "You have kind eyes." Marcus nearly dropped his tablet. Prisoners in maximum security weren't supposed to have access to translation software, yet somehow she was speaking his language perfectly. "You can understand me?" "I have had much time to learn," Zarathes replied. "The guards, they talk. They do not think I listen, but I learn your words. I learn many things in this place. Marcus looked around the corridor again, making sure they were alone. How long since you've had water? Food? 3 days for water, food. She paused, her massive head tilting slightly. I do not remember. Time moves strangely here. 3 days without water. Marcus felt his anger rising again. He knew enough about alien biology to understand that draconian females needed constant hydration during pregnancy. 3 days without water could kill both mother and child. Listen to me, Marcus said, kneeling down so he was closer to her eye level. I'm going to fix the life support first, but then I'm coming back. I'm going to help you. Zarathus looked at him with an expression that seemed almost human in its gratitude. Why would you help me? Your kind, they fear mine. They say we are monsters. Marcus thought about his answer carefully. The truth was, he didn't know why he wanted to help. Maybe it was because he had always believed in doing the right thing, regardless of species or politics. Maybe it was because he had lost his own mother during childbirth and couldn't stand to see another mother suffer. Or maybe it was simply because looking into Zarathus's eyes he saw not a monster but a person. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally, and because no mother should have to suffer alone. As Marcus began working on the power coupling, he could feel Zarathus watching him. For the first time in months she had hope. And for the first time in his life, Marcus was about to discover just how far he was willing to go to protect an innocent life. Human mechanic rescues pregnant alien dragon left alone in a cell. What he found next shocked him. Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag, the familiar smell of engine oil and metal filling his nostrils. The maintenance bay of the orbital station Kepler-7 hummed with the constant drone of life support systems and recycling units. As the head mechanic, Marcus had seen his fair share of broken machinery, but today felt different. The emergency alarm had been blaring for 3 hours straight, and the station's AI kept reporting critical failures in the detention level. Another day, another crisis, Marcus muttered to himself as he gathered his tools. The detention level wasn't usually his responsibility, but when life support systems failed, everyone became his problem. The elevator descended through the station's multiple levels, passing the commercial districts, residential areas, and administrative sections. The deeper they went, the more the walls seemed to close in. The detention level was a place Marcus rarely visited. It housed criminals, political prisoners, and other beings deemed dangerous by the Galactic Council. The air here felt heavier, thick with desperation and fear. Emergency lighting cast eerie shadows on the metallic walls, and the usual hum of ventilation systems was reduced to a wheeze. Marcus checked his tablet for the maintenance request. Life support failure in Cell Block D, Section 7. As he walked through the corridors, he noticed how quiet everything was. Too quiet. Even the guards seemed to have abandoned their posts. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallways, creating an unsettling rhythm that made his skin crawl. Human Mechanic Rescues. Pregnant Alien Dragon. Story Part 2. The power coupling repair took Marcus 2 hours, but he worked faster than he ever had before. Every few minutes he glanced back at Zarathus, watching her labored breathing and the way she kept shifting uncomfortably. When the life support systems finally hummed back to life, bringing fresh air and proper lighting to the detention block, Marcus saw the full extent of her condition. Zarathus was magnificent even in her weakened state. She was easily 20 feet long from nose to tail, with wings that had been folded tight against her body for so long that Marcus could see pressure sores where they met her sides. Her scales told a story of neglect and poor treatment, but underneath the grime and malnutrition, he could see hints of her former beauty. The air feels better now, she said, taking a deeper breath than she had managed in days. Thank you, kind human. Marcus packed up his tools, but instead of leaving, he sat down on the floor outside her cell. My name is Marcus. What's yours? I am called Zarathus of the Emerald Peaks, she replied, managing to lift her head with a bit more strength now that oxygen was flowing properly. Though I suspect my home no longer exists. What happened to your people? Zarathus was quiet for a long moment. We lived on a world called Verdania, in the Outer Rim territories. We were peaceful, Marcus. We had no weapons, no armies. We were scholars and artists, keepers of ancient knowledge. But your Galactic Council decided our world was strategically important. Marcus felt his stomach sink. He had heard rumors about forced relocations in the Outer Rim, but the official reports always claimed they were voluntary evacuations for the colonists' safety. They moved you? They tried to, Zarathus said, and for the first time Marcus heard anger in her voice. They came with ships and soldiers telling us we had to leave our ancestral homes. When we refused, they said we were harboring terrorists. They said we were a threat to galactic peace. Were you? Zarathus let out a sound that might have been laughter if it weren't so bitter. We were librarians, Marcus. Our greatest weapons were our books and our memories, but we refused to abandon the sacred sites where our ancestors were buried. For that, they called us insurgents. Marcus pulled up the prisoner file on his tablet again, using his maintenance clearance to access deeper levels of information. What he found made his blood run cold. The operation on Verdania had been classified as a preemptive strike against potential separatist activity. Casualty reports were marked as classified, but the date stamps told a story. The raids had happened 8 months ago, exactly when Zarathus would have been captured. How many of your people survived? Marcus asked quietly. I do not know, Zarathus replied, and Marcus could hear the pain in her voice. I was captured while trying to evacuate the younglings from our nursery caves. The soldiers, they separated us all. I have not seen another of my kind since that day. Marcus stood up, pacing back and forth in front of her cell. The more he learned, the angrier he became. This wasn't justice. This was genocide disguised as peacekeeping. When he reached Section 7, Marcus found the source of the problem immediately. A massive power coupling had blown out, leaving an entire block of cells without proper air circulation, heating, or lighting. But as he began his diagnostic, he heard something that made him freeze. It was a low rumbling sound like distant thunder, but it came in regular intervals. Breathing. Following the sound, Marcus discovered that most of the cells in this section were empty. The evacuation protocols had moved prisoners to other areas when the life support failed. All except one. At the end of the corridor in the largest cell, something massive stirred in the darkness. Marcus approached cautiously, his flashlight cutting through the gloom. What he saw made him gasp. Curled up in the corner of the cell was the largest living creature he had ever encountered. It looked like the dragons from ancient Earth legends, but this was no fantasy. Scales the color of deep emeralds covered its body, and even in its weakened state it radiated an otherworldly beauty. The dragon's eyes opened as his light fell upon her, and Marcus saw intelligence there. Not the wild animal intelligence he might have expected, but something deeper. Something that reminded him of his own mother's eyes when she had been pregnant with his sister. This creature was not just intelligent, she was with child. Marcus quickly checked his tablet for information about the prisoner. The file was mostly classified, but what he could read made his blood boil. The dragon's name was Zarathus, and she had been captured during a raid on a peaceful colony. The charges against her were vague, but the detention order came directly from the Galactic Council's military division. She had been here for 8 months. 8 months without proper medical care. 8 months in a cell barely large enough for her massive frame. 8 months while carrying young. Marcus felt his hands clench into fists. He had always believed that the Galactic Council represented justice and order in the universe. But this was neither just nor orderly. Zarathus tried to lift her head as Marcus approached the cell's energy barrier. Her movements were slow and labored, and Marcus could see that she was severely dehydrated. Her scales, which should have been brilliant green, had dulled to a sickly gray-green. Worse still, he could see the slight bulge in her abdomen that indicated her pregnancy was well advanced. "Hey there, girl," Marcus said softly, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "I'm here to fix the life support. You're going to be okay." The dragon's eyes focused on him with surprising clarity. She made a sound almost like a purr, but deeper and more resonant. Marcus had worked with enough alien species to recognize when someone was trying to communicate. He pulled up the translation matrix on his tablet, hoping it had draconian language patterns. To his surprise, when Zarathus spoke again, the words came through in clear English. "You are not like the others," she said, her voice weak but melodious. "You have kind eyes." Marcus nearly dropped his tablet. Prisoners in maximum security weren't supposed to have access to translation software. Yet somehow she was speaking his language perfectly. "You can understand me?" "I have had much time to learn," Zarathus replied. "The guards, they talk. They do not think I listen, but I learn your words. I learn many things in this place." Marcus looked around the corridor again, making sure they were alone. "How long since you've had water? Food?" 3 days for water. Food. She paused, her massive head tilting slightly. I do not remember. Time moves strangely here. 3 days without water. Marcus felt his anger rising again. He knew enough about alien biology to understand that draconian females needed constant hydration during pregnancy. 3 days without water could kill both mother and child. Listen to me, Marcus said, kneeling down so he was closer to her eye level. I'm going to fix the life support first, but then I'm coming back. I'm going to help you. Zarathus looked at him with an expression that seemed almost human in its gratitude. Why would you help me? Your kind, they fear mine. They say we are monsters. Marcus thought about his answer carefully. The truth was, he didn't know why he wanted to help. Maybe it was because he had always believed in doing the right thing, regardless of species or politics. Maybe it was because he had lost his own mother during childbirth and couldn't stand to see another mother suffer. Or maybe it was simply because looking into Zarathus's eyes he saw not a monster, but a person. Because it's the right thing to do, he said finally, and because no mother should have to suffer alone. As Marcus began working on the power coupling, he could feel Zarathus watching him. For the first time in months she had hope. And for the first time in his life, Marcus was about to discover just how far he was willing to go to protect an innocent life. Marcus spent the entire night planning. He returned to his quarters and spread out the station schematics on his desk, studying every maintenance corridor, service tunnel, and emergency route. The station was massive, but Marcus knew it like his own body. He had crawled through every vent, repaired every system, and memorized every shortcut during his 15 years of service. The biggest challenge wasn't getting Zarathus out of her cell. Marcus had override codes for the detention level's power systems. The real problem was where to take her. A 20-foot pregnant dragon couldn't exactly blend in with the station's population, and every level had security cameras and patrol routes. But Marcus remembered something from his early days on the station. In the lower engineering sections, there were abandoned storage bays that had been sealed off when the station underwent its last major renovation. These areas were too small for normal cargo operations, but too large to be cost-effective to convert to other uses. More importantly, they were outside the main security grid, monitored only by basic environmental sensors. As dawn approached in the station's artificial day cycle, Marcus gathered supplies for what might be a very long journey. Medical equipment, food, water, blankets, and most importantly, a portable power generator. If Zarathus was going to give birth soon, she would need a clean, warm environment with proper lighting. The shift change began at 800 hours. Marcus watched from a maintenance alcove as the night guards finished their rounds and headed to the transport bay. The day shift wouldn't arrive for another 6 hours due to a scheduling conflict that Marcus may have accidentally created by submitting a false maintenance request that required the detention level to operate on minimal staff. At 0830, Marcus made his move. He accessed the power control junction for cell block D and carefully shut down the energy barriers in section 7. Alarms immediately began blaring, but Marcus had prepared for this too. His tablet showed the alarms as a planned maintenance procedure, and the automated systems dutifully logged it as routine work. When Marcus reached Zarathus's cell, she was already waiting by the barrier. I did not think you would truly return, she said, though relief was evident in her voice. I told you I'd help, Marcus replied. Deactivating the last of the security measures. Can you move? We need to get out of here quickly. Zarathus struggled to her feet, her movements slow and careful. Months of confinement had left her muscles weak, and her pregnancy made every motion difficult. But determination showed in her eyes as she stepped out of the cell for the first time in 8 months. Where are we going? She asked as Marcus led her down the corridor. Somewhere safe, Marcus replied, guiding her toward a maintenance hatch that opened into the service tunnels. It's going to be a tight fit, but these tunnels connect to the lower levels without going through any security checkpoints. The journey through the maintenance system was grueling. The tunnels were barely large enough for Zarathus, and several times Marcus worried that she might get stuck. Her breathing became labored and she had to stop frequently to rest, but she never complained, following Marcus through the maze of pipes and conduits with quiet determination. 2 hours later, they reached their destination. Marcus opened the access panel to Storage Bay 7G and helped Zarathus climb down into the abandoned space. The bay was larger than her cell, with enough room for her to stretch her wings and move around comfortably. More importantly, it was completely off the security grid, This is much better, Zarathus said, taking her first deep breath of freedom. The air tastes different when you are not caged. Marcus set up the portable generator and activated the lights. The bay illuminated to reveal a space that, while dusty and unused, was clean and dry. Perfect for what Marcus had in mind. This is just temporary, Marcus explained as he arranged the supplies he had brought. We need to figure out our next move. Our next move? Zarathus asked, settling down onto the nest of blankets Marcus had prepared. Marcus, you have already done more than I could have dreamed. You do not need to sacrifice more for me. Marcus sat down beside her, close enough to see the worry in her ancient eyes. Zarathus, what happened to your people was wrong. What they're doing to you is wrong. I can't fix the bigger picture, but I can make sure you and your daughter have a chance. Even if it costs you everything. Marcus thought about his life on the station. He had a good job, a comfortable apartment, and the respect of his colleagues. But none of that seemed important compared to the life growing inside Zarathus. Some things are more important than comfort and security. Zarathus was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was soft with emotion. In our culture, we have a concept called Thesnara. It means one who chooses to sacrifice for another without expectation of reward. It is the highest honor we can bestow. I'm not looking for honor, Marcus said. I'm just trying to do what's right. That is exactly what makes you Thesnara, Zarathus replied. Over the next few hours, Marcus worked to make the storage bay as comfortable as possible. He rigged up a ventilation system, installed proper lighting, and even managed to tap into the station's water supply. Zarathus watched him work with fascination, occasionally offering suggestions that showed her own considerable intelligence. You are very skilled with these machines, she observed as Marcus fine-tuned the environmental controls. I've been working with them for most of my life, Marcus replied. My father was a mechanic too. He taught me that every machine has a purpose, and if you understand that purpose, you can make it do almost anything. And what is your purpose, Marcus Chen? The question caught Marcus off guard. He paused in his work, considering his answer. I guess I've always believed that my purpose was to fix things that were broken. I just never realized that sometimes what's broken isn't a machine. As the day progressed, Marcus began to notice changes in Zarathus. She seemed restless, frequently shifting position and touching her abdomen. When he mentioned it, she gave him a look that was both excited and terrified. I think the little one is preparing to make her entrance, Zarathus said. The freedom, the better food and water, it has given her strength. But Marcus, I am frightened. Why? Draconian births are difficult, dangerous. In our culture, the entire community helps when a child is born. There are ceremonies, ancient knowledge, traditions that ensure both mother and child survive. Zarathus looked around the storage bay. Here, there is only you and me. Marcus felt a chill of fear. He had delivered a baby once before, during an emergency evacuation on a mining colony. But that had been a human birth with trained medical personnel available for backup. This was completely different. What do you need? Marcus asked. Tell me everything. Zarathus began to explain the draconian birth process, and Marcus listened with growing amazement and concern. Dragon births were unlike anything in human experience. The process could take days, required specific environmental conditions, and involved rituals that had been passed down for thousands of years. The most important thing, Zarathus explained, is that dragon young are born in their protective shells. The shell must be kept warm and humid for several hours after birth, or the child will not survive. Marcus made mental notes of everything she told him. Temperature control, humidity levels, specific positioning during labor. He approached it like any other technical challenge, breaking it down into manageable components. As evening approached in the station's day cycle, Zarathus's contractions began in earnest. Marcus had done everything he could to prepare, but now they were entering unknown territory. He sat beside her, offering what comfort he could, and prepared for the most important repair job of his life, helping to bring a new life into the universe. Are you ready for this? Marcus asked as Zarathus gripped his hand during a particularly strong contraction. No, she replied honestly, but ready or not, our daughter is coming. The labor lasted 18 hours. Marcus had never experienced anything like it. Zarathus endured waves of pain that would have incapacitated a human, but she bore it with a strength that left Marcus in awe. Between contractions, she continued to guide him through the process, explaining what would happen next and what he needed to do. The shell will be soft when she first emerges, Zarathus explained during a brief respite. You must not touch it directly with your hands. The oils from human skin can damage the protective membrane. Marcus had prepared makeshift gloves from sterile medical materials, along with clean cloths and warming lamps he had rigged from maintenance equipment. The storage bay now looked more like a medical facility than an abandoned room, with monitors displaying temperature and humidity levels. As dawn approached in the station's cycle, Zarathus's contractions reached their peak. Marcus could see the strain on her face, the way her claws dug furrows in the metal floor, but she never once cried out. Instead, she hummed, a low, resonant sound that seemed to fill the entire bay with warmth and calm. That is the birth song of my people, she explained when Marcus asked about it. It is sung to welcome new life into the universe and to give strength to the mother. It's beautiful, Marcus said, and meant it. The melody was unlike anything in human music, complex and layering, as if Zarathus was harmonizing with herself. When the moment finally came, it happened quickly. The shell emerged in a rush of fluid, about the size of a large watermelon, but elongated and covered in a soft, translucent membrane that pulsed with its own inner light. Marcus carefully caught it in the sterile cloths, marveling at how warm it felt and how he could see movement inside. She is perfect, Zarathus whispered, exhaustion and joy mixing in her voice. Place her in the warming nest. Marcus gently transferred the shell to the heated bedding he had prepared. The membrane was already beginning to harden, shifting from translucent to a deep emerald green that matched Zarathus's scales. Inside he could see the tiny dragon moving, already perfect in miniature. How long before she hatches? Marcus asked. 6 to 8 hours, Zarathus replied, struggling to lift her head to see her daughter. But first I must recover. The birth has taken much from me. Marcus helped Zarathus get comfortable, providing water and the high-energy foods he had been saving for this moment. Despite her exhaustion, she couldn't take her eyes off the shell where her daughter was developing. In our culture, Zarathus said quietly, the father would now sing the naming song. Since there is no father present, that honor would fall to the birth helper. Me. Marcus felt overwhelmed by the responsibility. I don't know your songs. Then sing one of yours, Zarathus suggested. Any song of welcome or joy. The important thing is that she hears a voice calling her into the world. Marcus thought for a moment, then began to sing an old lullaby his mother had sung to him as a child. His voice was rough and untrained, but he poured all of his hope and wonder into the simple melody. As he sang, the movement inside the shell seemed to calm, as if the baby dragon was listening. The peaceful moment was shattered by the sound of alarms echoing through the station's corridors. Marcus's blood ran cold as he recognized the pattern. Security alert, all levels. They had been discovered. They know I'm missing, Zarathus said, fear creeping into her voice. They will search everywhere. Marcus was already moving, checking the security feeds on his tablet. Teams of guards were systematically searching the station, level by level. They had maybe 2 hours before the search reached the abandoned storage areas. We need to move, Marcus said, then stopped himself. No, you need to move. I'm the one they're looking for. If I lead them away from here... Marcus, no, Zarathus interrupted. You cannot sacrifice yourself. Not now when my daughter is about to be born. And I can't let them find you either, Marcus replied. Not when she's this vulnerable. As they argued, the movement inside the shell intensified. Cracks began to appear in the now hardened surface, small fissures that glowed with internal light. She comes, Zarathus whispered. The hatching begins. Marcus forgot about the search teams, forgot about the danger, forgot about everything except the miracle happening before his eyes. The cracks spread across the shell's surface in a pattern that seemed almost deliberate, like a puzzle designed to open at exactly the right moment. A tiny claw poked through one of the larger cracks, followed by a snout no bigger than Marcus's thumb. The baby dragon pushed and struggled, instinctively knowing how to free herself from her shell prison. With each movement, more cracks appeared until finally, with a sound like breaking glass, the shell split open completely. The dragon hatchling that emerged was the most beautiful thing Marcus had ever seen. She was perfect in every detail. Tiny scales that shimmered like jewels, wings that were already perfectly formed despite being no bigger than his hand, and eyes that held the same ancient intelligence he had seen in her mother. The baby dragon looked around the storage bay with curiosity rather than fear, taking in her new world with obvious intelligence. When her gaze fell on Marcus, she tilted her head and made a small chirping sound. "She recognizes you," Zarathus said with amazement. "Dragons imprint on the first beings they see after hatching. You are now as much her family as I am." Marcus reached out slowly and the tiny dragon stepped onto his palm without hesitation. She was warm, her scales soft as silk, and she weighed almost nothing. When she looked up at him and chirped again, Marcus felt his heart expand in ways he hadn't known were possible. "Hello, little one," he whispered. "Welcome to the universe." The moment was interrupted by the sound of footsteps in the corridor outside. The search teams were getting closer, and the hatching had left evidence that would be impossible to hide. Shell fragments glowed softly in the warming nest, and the scent of a newborn dragon would be unmistakable to anyone with proper sensors. "They will find us soon," Zarathus said, pulling her daughter close to her chest. "Marcus, you must go. Take your freedom while you still can." Marcus looked at Zarathus and her newborn daughter, then at the approaching search teams, and made a decision that surprised even himself. Instead of running, he activated his communicator and sent a message to the one person on the station who might be able to help them. Dr. Sarah Reynolds, the station's chief medical officer, had always been someone Marcus respected. She was known for her integrity and her willingness to stand up for what was right, even when it put her at odds with the administration. "Sarah," Marcus said into the communicator, "I need your help. It's about saving 2 innocent lives, but I can't explain over open channels. Can you meet me at Storage Base 7G immediately?" There was a pause, then Sarah's voice came back calm and professional. "On my way." Marcus turned to Zarathus. "I'm not running. We're going to face this together, all 3 of us." The baby dragon chirped from her mother's embrace as if agreeing with the plan, and for the first time since this whole adventure began, Marcus felt truly confident that they were going to find a way through this crisis. The footsteps outside were getting closer, but Marcus was no longer afraid. Whatever happened next, they would face it as a family. Dr. Sarah Reynolds arrived at Storage Base 7G within minutes, her medical bag in hand and questions clearly burning in her eyes. When Marcus opened the access hatch and she saw Zarathus with her newborn daughter, Sarah's expression shifted from confusion to amazement to professional concern in rapid succession. "Marcus, what have you done?" she asked, though her tone suggested she already approved of whatever it was. "What needed to be done?" Marcus replied, helping Sarah down into the bay. "Sarah, meet Zarathus and her daughter. They need medical attention, and they need protection." Sarah immediately went into doctor mode, pulling out her medical scanner and approaching Zarathus with the calm confidence that had made her one of the most respected physicians in the sector. "May I examine you and your child?" she asked Zarathus directly. "You are not afraid of me?" Zarathus asked, surprise evident in her voice. "I'm a doctor," Sarah replied simply. "Fear doesn't factor into medical care." As Sarah began her examination, Marcus explained the situation as quickly as he could. The illegal detention, the neglect during pregnancy, the impending search teams, and the birth that had just taken place. Sarah listened without interruption, her scanner recording detailed readings of both mother and child. "Both patients are stable," Sarah announced after completing her examination. "The mother shows signs of prolonged malnutrition and stress, but nothing that can't be treated. The infant is perfect, healthy, alert, and developing normally." She looked directly at Marcus. "You did good work here." The sound of voices in the corridor outside made them all freeze. The search teams were close now, probably only minutes away from discovering their location. "Dr. Reynolds," came a voice over the communicator. "This is Security Chief Morrison. We're conducting a station-wide search for escaped prisoner. Have you seen anything unusual in your area?" Sarah activated her communicator with steady hands. "Chief Morrison, this is Dr. Reynolds. I'm responding to a medical emergency in the lower engineering sections. I'll need this area cleared of all non-medical personnel until I can complete my work." There was a pause. "What kind of medical emergency, Doctor?" "The kind that requires patient confidentiality," Sarah replied coolly. "If you need details, you can request them through proper medical channels after I've stabilized my patients." Marcus held his breath. Sarah was using her authority as chief medical officer to buy them time, but it was a risky move. if Morrison decided to override her medical authority. Understood, Doctor. We'll mark that section as off-limits for now. Let us know when you're finished. The voices in the corridor moved away, and Marcus felt some of the tension leave his shoulders. But Sarah was already thinking ahead. That buys us maybe an hour, she said. After that, Morrison is going to start asking harder questions, and I won't be able to protect you with medical privilege. What do we do? Marcus asked. Sarah looked at Zarathes and her daughter, then at Marcus. We tell the truth, but we tell it to the right people. She activated her communicator again, this time on a secured medical channel. This is Dr. Reynolds requesting immediate contact with Admiral Chen of the Galactic Medical Ethics Board. Priority 1 medical ethics violation to report. Marcus felt his heart skip. Admiral Chen was one of the most powerful figures in the Galactic Council, someone whose word carried weight even in the military command structure. He was also, Marcus realized with growing hope, someone who shared his last name. Marcus, Sarah said while they waited for the connection. Is Admiral Chen related to you? My uncle, Marcus admitted. My father's brother. We haven't spoken in years, but he's the one who got me this job in the first place. The communicator crackled to life with an authoritative voice. Dr. Reynolds, this is Admiral Chen. What's the nature of this priority violation? Sarah took a deep breath. Admiral, I'm reporting the unlawful detention and medical neglect of a pregnant alien civilian, resulting in endangerment of both mother and unborn child. The situation has been complicated by the intervention of a station maintenance worker who took action to preserve life when official channels failed. There was a long pause. Dr. Reynolds, are you telling me that someone on your station was detaining a pregnant civilian without proper medical care? Yes, Admiral. And furthermore, the detention appears to have been based on false charges related to the Verdania incident. Another pause, longer this time. When Admiral Chen spoke again, his voice was deadly calm. Dr. Reynolds, I want you to secure that area immediately. No one gets in or out without my personal authorization. I'm dispatching a medical transport with a full ethics investigation team. 2 hours. Understood, Admiral. And Doctor, if what you're telling me is accurate, there are going to be some very serious consequences for the people responsible for this situation. After the connection ended, Sarah turned to Marcus and Zarathes. We wait, and we hope that your uncle is as principled as his reputation suggests. The next 2 hours felt like the longest of Marcus's life. Sarah worked to improve Zarathes's condition, administering nutrients and medications that would help her recover from the ordeal. The baby dragon, who Zarathes had decided to name Lyra, after an ancient draconian word for hope, spent her time exploring her new environment and bonding with both her mother and her unexpected human family. Marcus found himself constantly amazed by Lyra's intelligence. Despite being only hours old, she seemed to understand that they were in hiding. She kept her voice down to small chirps and showed remarkable awareness of the adult's emotions. When Zarathes seemed tired, Lyra would curl up quietly beside her. When Marcus appeared worried, she would climb onto his shoulder and nuzzle his cheek. She knows you are her protector, Zarathes explained when Marcus mentioned this. Dragons are born with an understanding of pack dynamics. You have proven yourself as family. When Admiral Chen's team finally arrived, they came in force. Not just medical personnel, but legal advocates, ethics investigators, and even a small military escort. Marcus heard them securing the area outside, establishing a perimeter that would keep out curious onlookers and potentially hostile station personnel. Admiral Chen himself was the first through the access hatch. Marcus hadn't seen his uncle in over 5 years, but the man looked exactly the same. Tall, distinguished, with the kind of presence that commanded instant respect. When his eyes fell on the scene in the storage bay, his expression went through several rapid changes. Marcus, he said finally, when I heard a Chen was involved in this situation, I should have known it would be you. Uncle James, Marcus replied, unsure whether he was about to be commended or court-martialed. Admiral Chen approached Zarathes with the same respectful demeanor Sarah had shown. Ma'am, I am Admiral Chen of the Galactic Medical Ethics Board. I understand you've been through a terrible ordeal, and I want to assure you that we're here to make this right. Zarathes studied him carefully before responding. You are Marcus's family. I can see the resemblance in your eyes. I am, Admiral Chen confirmed. And I want you to know that what happened to you and your people was not authorized by any legitimate authority. Someone is going to answer for this. Over the next hour, Admiral Chen's team documented everything. They recorded Zarathus's testimony about the Verdania raids, examined the medical evidence of her neglect, and took detailed statements from both Marcus and Sarah. Throughout it all, little Lyra remained calm, as if she sensed that these new humans were there to help. Finally, Admiral Chen sat down with Marcus privately. "You know you could have been charged with treason for this," he said. "I know," Marcus replied, "but I couldn't let them die." Admiral Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Your father would be proud of you. He always said the most important thing was to do what's right, regardless of the consequences. What happens now? Now we fix this mess. Zarathus and her daughter will be given full refugee status and medical care. The people responsible for the Verdania incident are going to face war crimes tribunals. And you," Admiral Chen smiled for the first time since arriving, "you're going to receive the Galactic Medal of Humanitarian Service." Marcus felt overwhelmed. "I don't need a medal. I just wanted to help." "That's exactly why you deserve it," Admiral Chen replied. "But more importantly, you've helped expose a corruption that was spreading through our military command. Because of your actions, we can start to clean house and make sure this never happens again." As the Admiral's team prepared to transport Zarathus and Lyra to a proper medical facility, Marcus felt a pang of loss. He had only known them for a few days, but they had become family. "This is not goodbye," Zarathus assured him as she prepared to leave. "You will always be welcome among our people, Thessanara Marcus. And Lyra will grow up knowing the story of the human who saved her life." Little Lyra chirped and reached for Marcus one last time, and he gently stroked her tiny head with one finger. "Take care of your mother," he whispered to her, "and remember that you're going to grow up in a universe where at least some people believe in doing the right thing." 3 months after the rescue, Marcus received an encrypted message that made his hands shake as he read it. The return address was from the Draconian refugee settlement on Kepler 9, and the sender was listed as Zarathus. The message was brief but filled with warmth. "Thessanara Marcus, Lyra speaks your name daily and asks when her human father will visit. We have much to show you. The settlement prospers and there are things you must see. Please come when you can. Your family awaits." Marcus had been following the news about the Draconian refugees through official channels, but this personal invitation meant everything to him. The investigation into the Verdania incident had revealed a conspiracy that reached deep into the military command structure. Over 40 officers had been arrested, and the survivors of the Draconian genocide were being relocated to a protected world where they could rebuild their civilization. The transport to Kepler 9 took 2 days, giving Marcus time to think about everything that had changed since that night in the detention center. Station Kepler 7 had a new command structure, one that emphasized humanitarian principles over military efficiency. Marcus had been promoted to Chief Engineering Officer, but more importantly, he had been asked to head up a new program training maintenance personnel to recognize and report humanitarian violations. When the transport docked at Kepler 9, Marcus was amazed by what he saw. The settlement was beautiful, with crystal spires that captured and reflected the system's twin suns, creating rainbows that danced across the landscape. But what struck him most was the sound. Draconian voices raised in harmony, singing the complex melodies that had become familiar to him during Lyra's birth. Zarathus was waiting for him at the landing platform, and Marcus barely recognized her. The magnificent dragon he had always sensed beneath the malnutrition and stress was now fully revealed. Her scales gleamed like polished emeralds, her wings were fully extended in welcome, and her eyes sparkled with health and happiness. "Marcus," she called out, her voice carrying easily across the platform. "Welcome to New Verdania." But it was the small figure racing toward him that made Marcus's heart leap. Lyra had grown considerably in 3 months, now about the size of a large dog, but she moved with the same joyful energy he remembered. She launched herself into his arms with a delighted chirp, and Marcus caught her easily, marveling at how much stronger and more confident she had become. "Human father," Lyra said, and Marcus nearly dropped her in surprise. "She speaks now. Dragon young develop quickly when they are healthy and safe," Zarathus explained, approaching more sedately. "She has been practicing human words so she could greet you properly." Marcus spent the first day simply marveling at the settlement. The Draconians had not merely survived their ordeal, they had thrived. The population was still small, only about 300 individuals had survived the Verdania raids, but they had created something beautiful and new while honoring their ancient traditions. We learned much about adaptation during our captivity, Zarathes explained as she showed him through the settlement's library. We realized that preserving our culture did not mean preserving every single tradition unchanged. Some things could evolve while keeping their essential meaning. The library itself was a perfect example. Traditional draconian knowledge storage involved crystalline matrices that recorded not just information, but the emotions and context surrounding it. But the new library also included human-style books and digital archives, creating a hybrid system that could serve both species. Many humans have come to study with us, Zarathes continued. Your uncle, Admiral Chen, visits regularly. He says our approach to multidimensional information storage could revolutionize human education. That evening, Marcus attended his first draconian community gathering. The entire population assembled in a natural amphitheater where they shared stories, sang traditional songs, and welcomed new members to their community. Marcus was astounded to realize that he was not the only human present. Several dozen humans lived and worked in the settlement, and they were clearly accepted as full members of the community. How did this happen? Marcus asked Zarathes as they watched Lyra play with other young dragons and human children. When word spread about what you did, many humans reached out to us, Zarathes explained. They wanted to help, to learn, to be part of something better than what their governments had done. We welcomed them, just as you welcomed us. The formal ceremony came on Marcus's third day in the settlement. The entire community gathered in the central plaza, where an ornate pedestal held a crystal that seemed to contain captured starlight. Elder dragons that Marcus had not met before emerged from the crowd, their scales bearing the patina of great age and wisdom. Marcus Chen, the eldest dragon intoned in a voice that resonated through the crystal spires, you stand before the Council of New Verdania to receive the highest honor our people can bestow. Marcus felt overwhelmed as the ceremony proceeded in both Draconian and English. He learned that Thesnara was not just a word of gratitude, but an actual title that carried responsibilities and privileges. Those who bore the title were considered permanent members of the Draconian family, regardless of species, and were expected to serve as bridges between cultures. But the greatest honor, the elder continued, is not in the title we give you, but in the trust one small dragon has placed in you. Lyra stepped forward. No longer the tiny hatchling Marcus remembered, but still unmistakably his little dragon. In her claws she carried a small crystal that pulsed with warm light. Human father, she said formally. Will you accept the bond of family? Will you teach me about your people as my mother teaches me about ours? Marcus knelt down so he was at Lyra's eye level. The crystal she offered was a bonding stone, he realized, a tradition that created permanent family ties between dragons and other beings they considered worthy of absolute trust. Yes, Marcus said, accepting the crystal. Always yes. The moment his hands touched the stone, Marcus felt something change inside him. It was as if a new sense had awakened, allowing him to perceive emotions and intentions from the dragons around him. But more than that, he could feel Lyra's absolute joy and love, and Zarathes's deep gratitude and affection. The bond is formed, the elder announced. Marcus Chen is now and forever family to the House of Emerald Peaks, with all the rights and responsibilities that entails. That night, as the celebration continued around them, Marcus sat with Zarathes and Lyra under the twin moons of Kepler 9. The bonding stone hung around his neck, warm against his skin and pulsing gently with his heartbeat. What happens now? Marcus asked. Now you go back to your work, Zarathes replied. You continue to fix the things that are broken in the universe, but you do it knowing that you have a family here who loves you and supports you. And I will grow strong and learn both cultures, Lyra added, curled up between them. And someday when I am older I will help fix things too. Marcus looked up at the stars, thinking about all the worlds out there where injustice might be happening, where people might need help, where someone might need to make the choice between comfort and doing what was right. Yes, he said, one hand on Lyra's warm scales and the other holding Zarathes's claw. We'll fix things together. The bonding stone pulsed with agreement, and Marcus knew that his real adventure was just beginning. 2 years after the bonding ceremony, Marcus stood in the main conference room of the newly established Interspecies Humanitarian Council, watching delegates from 47 different worlds debate the Universal Rights Charter. The charter was largely based on the principles that had emerged from the Verdania investigation, and Marcus still found it surreal that his simple decision to help a pregnant dragon had led to galactic political reform. "The humans are being stubborn again," came a familiar voice behind him. Marcus turned to see Lyra approaching, now nearly adult-sized and serving as the youngest member of the Draconian diplomatic corps. Her scales had developed the deep emerald color of her mother's lineage, but her eyes held a wisdom that seemed beyond her years. "Which issue this time?" Marcus asked, though he had a good idea. "They want to add exceptions to the protection clauses for military necessity," Lyra replied, settling beside him with the fluid grace that all dragons possessed. Some species never learn. Marcus watched the debate with mixed emotions. The human delegates weren't being malicious. They were simply trapped in old patterns of thinking that prioritized security over compassion. It was the same mindset that had led to the Verdania atrocity in the first place. "Want to show them why that's a bad idea?" Marcus asked. Lyra's eyes lit up with anticipation. "May I?" Marcus nodded, and Lyra moved to the center of the conference room. When she spoke, her voice carried the harmonic undertones that made draconian speech so compelling. "Honored delegates," she began, "I would like to share a story with you. It is the story of how military necessity once sentenced my mother to die in a cold cell, and how one human's refusal to accept that necessity changed the course of galactic history." The room fell silent as Lyra told the tale of her own birth, speaking with the natural storytelling ability that was part of her heritage. She painted vivid pictures of her mother's suffering, of Marcus's moral courage, and of the corruption that had masqueraded as military policy. When she finished, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. "The question before us today," Lyra concluded, "is whether we will build a galaxy where military necessity can again be used to justify the unjustifiable, or whether we will choose to be better than our fears." The human delegate who had been arguing for the exceptions looked deeply uncomfortable. "But surely there must be some situations where difficult choices are necessary." "Of course," Lyra agreed. "But the moment we write exceptions into our principles, we create loopholes that will be exploited by those who value power over life. Better to have principles that sometimes prove difficult to follow than no principles at all." Marcus felt a surge of pride watching his adopted daughter speak. In the 2 years since his bonding with the House of Emerald Peaks, he had watched Lyra grow from a playful hatchling into a formidable advocate for justice. Her unique perspective as someone who had been born during humanity's darkest hour but raised during its redemption gave her words special weight. The debate continued for several more hours, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Lyra's story had reminded everyone why they were there, and the Universal Rights Charter was adopted without exceptions by a unanimous vote. After the session, Marcus found himself on the observation deck of the council station, looking out at the stars. The station itself was a marvel of interspecies cooperation, built jointly by humans, draconians, and a dozen other species as a symbol of their commitment to peace and justice. "You look thoughtful," Zarathus said, joining him at the viewport. She had arrived the day before as part of the Draconian delegation, and Marcus was always glad to see her. "I was just thinking about how far we've all come," Marcus replied. 2 years ago I was just a mechanic trying to keep the lights on. Now I'm helping to shape galactic policy." "You were never just a mechanic," Zarathus corrected gently. "You were always someone who fixed things that were broken. The scale has simply grown larger." Marcus smiled at that. It was true that his role had evolved dramatically. As the first human to be formally bonded with a draconian house, he had become a natural bridge between the species. His work now involved traveling to trouble spots throughout the galaxy, investigating humanitarian concerns and helping to resolve conflicts before they escalated into violence. "I have news," Zarathus continued. "The Council has approved our proposal for the Interspecies Academy. Construction will begin next year on Kepler 9. Marcus felt a thrill of excitement. The Academy had been his and Zarathus's joint project for months, a school where young beings from all species could learn together, fostering understanding and cooperation from an early age. Lyra had been heavily involved in the planning, drawing on her own experience of growing up between cultures. How many species have committed to participating? 17 so far, with more expressing interest, Zarathus replied. The Crystalline Collective is particularly excited about sharing their mathematical concepts with organic minds. And the humans? Your uncle has personally guaranteed Earth's participation. He says it's the least they can do after everything that happened. Admiral Chen had become one of Marcus's closest allies in the years since the rescue. The investigation into the Verdania incident had revealed corruption that reached deep into Earth's military command, and Chen had led the reforms that followed. He was now the Secretary General of Earth's new humanitarian command, dedicated to ensuring that such atrocities never happened again. There's something else, Zarathus said, her tone becoming more serious. We've received reports of concerning activities in the Centauri sector. Several colony worlds have gone silent, and refugee ships have been spotted fleeing the area. Marcus felt his stomach tighten. This was exactly the kind of situation that the new humanitarian protocols were designed to address. Do we know who's responsible? Not yet. But the pattern is similar to what happened on Verdania. Mysterious military operations, communications blackouts, civilian populations disappearing. Marcus was already thinking about logistics. How soon can we get there? Lyra has volunteered to join the investigation team, Zarathus said. She says it's time for her to see the universe beyond New Verdania. Marcus felt a mixture of pride and worry. Lyra was certainly capable enough for such a mission, but the thought of her facing the same kind of dangers that had threatened her mother made his protective instincts flare. She's ready, Zarathus said, reading his expression. We raised her to be ready. I know, Marcus replied. It's just hard to watch your daughter grow up and start taking on the world's problems, even when those are exactly the problems you raised her to solve. Marcus laughed despite his concerns, especially then. The next morning, Marcus found himself aboard the exploration vessel Harmony's Edge, bound for the Centauri sector with a full investigation team. Lyra was indeed part of the crew, serving as both diplomatic liaison and cultural specialist. The ship's captain was Commander Sarah Reynolds, who had left her position as chief medical officer to join the new humanitarian command. Just like old times, Sarah said as they reviewed the mission briefings. Except now, instead of hiding in storage bays, we're flying toward trouble in an official capacity. Some things never change, Marcus agreed. We're still trying to help people who need it. As the Harmony's Edge entered hyperspace, Marcus stood in the observation lounge with Lyra, watching the stars streak past. His adopted daughter had grown into a remarkable individual, combining the best qualities of both their species with a wisdom that seemed to come from her unique experiences. Are you nervous? Marcus asked. Excited, Lyra replied. This is what we trained for, what we prepared for. This is our chance to make sure no other mother has to suffer like mine did. Marcus nodded, feeling the weight of the bonding stone against his chest. The crystal still pulsed with warmth, connecting him to his draconian family and reminding him of the choice he had made in that detention center 2 years ago. Whatever we find out there, Marcus said, we face it together. Together, Lyra agreed, and Marcus could feel her determination through their bond. As the ship raced toward unknown dangers and new opportunities to make a difference, Marcus reflected on how a simple decision to help someone in need had transformed not just his own life, but the lives of billions of beings across the galaxy. Sometimes the most important things we do are the smallest acts of kindness, performed when no one is watching and no reward is expected. But sometimes, those small acts grow into something magnificent. The stars called to them, and together, the human mechanic and the dragon daughter he had helped bring into the world raced toward their next chance to fix something that was broken in the universe.